Hi guys, this is a Forgetful Scholar, and let's chat about books, shall we? So this week, I have a confession to make. I only read 3 books this week. I'm sorry. It's just, well, last week when I was reading these books, it was Thanksgiving week, and you know what, I just didn't plan well enough to accommodate my usual 4 books plus holiday stuff. My bad, but I did get 3 books in this week, so that's not too bad, right? Alright? It's okay, right? Alright, so sorry about that. Man, I wish I could stop fidgeting, but that's not gonna happen. So, first book of this week. No one's surprised by this. I'm sure y'all are tired of it, but here we go. I'm not tired of them, so I'm still reading them. Smoke and Murders. A Maxwell Thornton Murder Mystery, Book 4. I'm in Shadow by SC1. Okay. I That's pretty cool, right? I mean, I don't know if you could tell, but I really like how the smoke is kind of coming out of the mirror. I don't know, I find that very aesthetically pleasing. But I say that all the time. So, anyway. This one is book 4 of Dr. Max and his adventures in Rainydale, Texas, with the sheriff, Royce. So last time we saw these guys, I wasn't too happy with that book. Not that it's not a wonderful series, it wasn't particularly one of my favorites. But Max and Ross were fighting. And the last part of the book, the fight hasn't been resolved, and Max's clinic is burned down. Turns out it was arson. So this book, instead of really murders, at least for the most part, it's trying to catch an arsonist. And of course, I expected it. I tried to lessen it for myself, but I expected it. I knew it was going to happen. I knew I was going to be annoyed, because I always get annoyed when the characters try to have an important conversation, and they get interrupted. But that's a classic device. I knew it was gonna happen. It's just one of my things. I'm like, ugh. Not that it's detracting from the overall book. By the way, the overall book, 4 stars. Yay, we're back to 4 stars. I really do like this author, and I think normally their plot lines are flawless. I like their characters. They're unique. They're different. They're not the stereotypical, like sweet little Max is a socially anxious little bean, and we adore him, So in this one, before, it did bother me that Roy seemed to want Max to change. In this one, it goes a little bit more in depth, and and the author did make a point of Max's POV stating that he wants to change. I was like, okay, cool. So most of my hang-ups over the stupid argument are gone. And of course, it gets interrupted. So the criminal storyline in this one, there's 2, and I don't want to give too much away, but there is a murder that happens later on. So there's 2 crime storylines. I would say both had a satisfactory ending. The murder one, I think, could have gone a little bit more in depth, but it was an interesting red herring for the arson storyline. And that one really, I really like that one. I found the criminal, I guess, the arsonist, once you find out who it is, there's a pang of sympathy for it. So there is that. Man, it's hard to talk about these books without giving stuff away, but I'm trying. I don't know what that is. Let's just wipe it from our collective memories. Okay. Can you tell I'm a little hyper than usual this week? Anyway, the love line had a very satisfactory ending. I was happy with the happy ending. I was happy with how that ended up. Royce and Max, again, I love that we get both their POVs. It makes it easier to see where the other one's coming from in terms of this argument. And again, arguments in romance novels, it's really hard to gauge. And the book before, I didn't particularly like the gauging of it. Just because this author's so good, I like so much of their stuff. You know what I mean? But this one, the having the tough conversations and like growing and, you know, understanding what it's like to really be in a relationship. I thought that was all really well. It was all really good. It was all really well done. I liked how this author is really good about having characters grow and change, but not completely turn a 180. Because sometimes you read a book and the character is growing and changing, but it's not very smooth. It's not very linear. So you get a character that's completely different from when it first starts. And sometimes it can feel a little choppy. Like almost that it's a different character placed in for another character. So I am really happy with how the progression went. And I was a little, like I said, I love this storyline. I think it's a great, like, crime of the week, would be a great crime of the week kind of stuff. I'm only hesitant for that because I would think they would screw it up because Max and Royce deserve to be together. And I don't know if they would do, like, crime of the week where the main couple's MM. They should because it's, you know, almost 2022, so they should, but whatever. This book ended kind of differently than the other books. Because the other books, there's a mystery that leads off into the next book. This one, however, wasn't. You just kind of get an epilogue about they're agreeing to go camping. And the new book is on pre-order. It's not out yet, and it does take place during their camping trip. So I was like, okay, it leads into it. Maybe the author wasn't sure when they were going to put out the fifth one, so they didn't want to kind of mislead their audience. Totally appreciate, and you know, I really do appreciate that. Totally love it. Totally appreciate that. And I know I read a lot of indie writers on Kindle. I'm sure a lot of people are annoyed by that, you know. Even I love the booktubers that have just hold the stack of books. And I do have a little right here, like TBR shelf over here. I basically cleared out my local youth bookstore of Lisa Kleypas, but I didn't want to bombard you with all Lisa Kleypas, you know. I mean, that could be fun. Maybe I'll do a week where it's just one author. Oh, anyway, I get that, but I don't know. I've been in reading like an independent writer's groove lately. I really like how they tend to push the boundaries a little bit more. Like last week, we read, if you were here for last week, it was an MM historical romance with a wonderful happy ending, but overarching Cthulhu storyline. Like what? I don't really see that being in like the mainstream publishers. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. So I don't know. I just kind of got into this groove, and I'm kind of digging it. So probably gonna happen a lot more. Like that's just sorry, not sorry. So that was 4 stars. I'm really happy about that one. Again, the book before it wasn't my thing. I gave it 2 stars, but that's okay. Sometimes you just don't particularly jive with the story, an author that you really, really like and really follow and love reading their stuff does, and that's all right. It doesn't mean I'm gonna throw out the whole collection, never read their stuff again, you know? So sometimes that happens. And what I might not like, someone else might adore. So, you know. Okay. Hopping off the soapbox, let's go to the next book. Manners and Monsters, book 1. That's the subtitle. And the main title is Manners and Monsters by Tilly Wallace. This was kind of cool, right? Like the silhouette, the yellow, that guy over there. Like, it's interesting, isn't it? Now, this one I kind of debated back and forth if I wanted to read it or not. I am actually happy I did. It did have a bit of kind of Gail Carriage vibe to it, but not quite. It's definitely a distinct voice for this author. I really didn't know quite what to expect, and that was the fun of it. This one, maybe this would have been better reading it during not spooky season, but I mean, for me, spooky season is all year round. It is all. So yeah. I'm gonna read what I want to read. So this one this book follows Hannah. She's the main female, and Wycliffe, and he's the male lead. So it follows those two. So basically, this is a historical taking place in England, and this sort of alternate historical kind of romance novel. And I believe this author has another series of books of like the Highland Wolves, I believe. So this exists in that kind of universe, specifically. So this is right after, you know, England fought Napoleon and things like that. And in this world, uh, supernatural creatures are a thing, like the Highland wolves are werewolves, and it's a thing. So this one, I was not expecting, probably because I didn't read the back cover, but I was not expecting a zombie romance, kind of. Like, it's not like anybody was romancing a zombie, but zombies were a huge part of this book. And I didn't hate it, which was a surprise because what was it, like 8 years ago or something? Zombies just saturated all media markets, and I was just done with zombies. But I did have fun with this book. I did. I definitely did. I gave it a 3 stars. Uh, Not because I didn't like the storyline, not that I didn't like the characters. It's just that, okay, and this is a kudos to the writer, but some of the descriptions about pickled brains and things like that, I was like, oh, this was a bad chapter to read when I was eating my tuna fish sandwich, let me tell you. Oof. I don't really usually get, sensitive to those things, but that's just, I guess that's just a point in the writer's direction. And I will say at one point towards the late middle of the book, the writer did make a tiny mistake that I noticed. It took me a second to realize, because this is a murder mystery as well. So there's a lot of names floating around, a lot of like well-to-do English ton family names flying around. And it seemed that the author wrote the family name Talbot when they meant Albright. And it just took me a second. It was like barely there, a little blip, but I did want to mention it. You know, transparency. I wanted to mention it. Wycliffe, he is super grumpy, rude, rar. His father gambled away the family money, and now that he's back from the war and he's inherited, people just expected him to sell off the property and run away. And the ton are angry in their tunnish kind of way that he didn't. He slowly paid off his father's debt, and yes, he still has debt of his own, which is super relatable. Oof. And he's slowly trying to figure out how to pay that off. And the ton are angry that he just didn't do what they expected, what an other ton member would do in that circumstances, So he's kind of like an outcast because of that. He does end up at this ball. Now, this is the ball that the 2 main characters meet in the beginning. Hannah, because like I said, supernaturals existed and mages exist, and how it is, and I thought this magic system was really, really interesting. I really liked this. So basically, England has, I think, only 12 mages, and when the mage dies, the magic goes to someone else, and it's not usually bloodlines. It just kind of randomly pops up in a child that's born the moment the mage dies, or the day the mage dies. But children of mages, the first generation, they don't have any powers. Anna has, like, she's a little sensitive to magic, but she doesn't have powers themselves. Usually by the third, if Anna has a child, they would have powers. So it was kind of interesting like that. So her mother was one of the, I think later on you found out she was the only female mage in like 200 years. She's uber powerful. But in this book, when we meet her, she is a zombie. And it took me a minute to realize, like, oh, she's a zombie. This is a zombie book. I probably should have read the back cover. Didn't, though. Okay, let's move on. So, and apparently she should have lost her power because there was a boy born with her powers the moment she became a zombie. She still has her powers. So now there's technically 13 mages of England, but she's dead, so she's not bound by her oath to work for England anymore. And, it's kind of implied her powers come from a darker place. I don't know if they're going to expand that later on. So zombie outbreak, and this was very interesting too. Like, the author's super clever. Like, there were so many fun twists to things. So how this is like a mixture of science and black magic in beauty powder. So from apparently an evil French mage, when they were losing war, did this. So it was distributed to the females of the time to beautify themselves. And that powder turned them into what you and I would think as zombies. Not all of them are, but a huge percent of them are. So there's new social rules for the zombies, and I'll let you guys discover those on your own, because I thought that was a really interesting twist. So Anna has no powers, but she's susceptible. Like, she can tell when someone's using magic. And and the ball they go to is her best friend Lizzie's engagement party. And Hannah is 22 and she thinks of herself as very plain and she's on the shelf and no one, she understands that that's just not in the cards for her. At least that's what she thinks. And her father is pretty much, I equated him to like mad scientist Frankenstein. So he's one of the leading scientific minds and he's trying to find a cure for his wife of the zombieism. And Hannah helps him out in his lab because she is brilliant. And she is. I really, really loved Hannah's character build. She was calm. She was very sweet. She was proper. She's really smart. It took a lot for her to lose her temper. And through all that, she was still a very strong person. Because like I said, not every strong character has to kick in the door and kick ass and take names. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the quiet one. So that was definitely Anna. She hears rumors about Wycliffe at the ball that he is at, and people are whispering that, like, calling him the Wraith, and she kind of thinks of him as that. And he's just really angry and bitter, and there's hints that there's something more going on with him, like, supernatural-wise. So that was fun, and it kept me engaged and kept me wanting to read more of the series. So there's a murder at the ball. Apparently a zombie is responsible because the murder victim's brains are scooped out and eaten. So that shoots us off. Like, that's boom. First act opener, here we go. I'm like, cool. Let's just jump into it. All right. So Wycliffe is basically an investigator for supernatural things. Like, there's a supernatural crime or suspect that a supernatural is involved or a crime against supernatural, he investigates. He's pretty prejudiced against zombies. Like, that's a thing. And when you're reading it, you're like, okay, because, like, if zombies suddenly appear in our world, I don't know if I'll just be 100% okay with them either. It might take me a minute. And I'm not trying to be, like, zombieist. Is that a thing? It's just, they eat brains. Human brains, specifically. Apparently, they've tried animal brains. So a new industry has opened up around this called pickled cauliflower. And the descriptions are really, like, intense for that and the decaying bodies of the zombies. And I'm just like, who? So if you're susceptible to nausea because of stuff like that, maybe think about that before you jump into this book. Or, jump into this book and just kind of skim over those descriptions. Because I don't want to penalize the writer for being brilliant at describing what you're seeing. That's kind of the point. So he's pretty bigoted against zombies. Reading from his point of view, you don't really blame him, but then you understand Anna's point of view because she loves her mother, and her mother seems like a pretty awesome person. And her mother really is a really interesting character. Like, she's really cool. So, I mean, that goes on, and there's a little... The reason it's 3 stars, the descriptions maybe a little nauseous, but the romance was super slow burn. I didn't particularly like that because, I mean, I get what the writer's trying to do. It's trying to build up this really deep connection of these two very different people. But, this book is 330 pages about, and I was like, so we read all through this, and the zombie murder really had me going, really got me interested, and that's saying something because I was so done with zombies for so long. However, in all those pages, there wasn't even, like, a kiss that they regretted or anything like that. So, at the most, you get, like, oh, he's handsome when he smiles, and they're thinking about each other. I mean, Wycliffe definitely knows that he's attracted to her. But halfway through the book, he knows he's attracted to her. So more on her end, you know what I mean? I just think, I get what the writer was going for. I just think maybe throw in a kiss, like maybe he kissed her and she slapped him, or he kissed her and he like immediately turned and left because he's rude and stuff like that. Maybe something about like a kiss that they regret or pretend they regret or think they should regret. Maybe that would have been a little nice. Just super, super, super slow burn. So I can't really tell you about the ending of the love line because there was barely a love line in it. Again, don't think you're going to get bored, because you're not going to get bored. I certainly didn't get bored. The world is rich. The zombies are interesting. It's an interesting take, especially how the male zombies seem to act different than the female zombies. Like, what does that entail for their society? Like, it was interesting. It was. And the next one, it seems to be 5 of these books out so far, so I might check out the next one. It's a different monster, a monster every week, a different monster for the next book, so that might be interesting. Again, if you're not into slow burns, then this might not be the book for you. Again, I don't think you would be bored, because I certainly wasn't. So that's for that one. That's why that's 3 stars. It was just too much of a slow burn for me to give it more than 3 stars. But I'm definitely going to check out more of this author's things. So there's that. Now, the last book, because I only did 3 books this week, oh no. So the last book is a comfort read for me, a reread, a revisit. Johanna Lindsey's The Heir. So this, here, let me show you that. Oh, look at that. Look at that lovely little cover. So this one, I think technically its title is The Heir, the Reid Family's Book 1, which is interesting because the Reid family is really just a secondary character in this, so that's kind of an interesting jumping point, I think, for Miss Johanna Lindsey, but what do I know? So this one, it's a 4-star comfort read. I have revisited this many times. Duncan and Sabrina are the main characters, the main couple. They're very cute. I adore Sabrina. I do enjoy Duncan. Sometimes in this book, beware, he does make really stupid choices that make you want to just be like, Duncan, what's wrong with you? You know, because his temper. So Duncan is, Duncan's parents both have died. So has Sabrina. So Sabrina lives with her maiden aunts, and Duncan is supposed to live with both his grandfathers, back and forth, co-parenting. But he only knows his Scottish grandfather, who's a little overbearing. Like, both grandparents are a little overbearing. He's never really met his English grandfather. So at the beginning of the book, in Duncan POV, you kind of don't like the English grandfather because you feel like Duncan's been abandoned and things like that. This is Johanna Lindsey, though. So keep that in mind. It's very rare when, like, a parental figure is full stop a dick. You know what I mean? So there are reasons why the British grandfather couldn't be there for Duncan. But the 2 grandfathers don't like each other, and they made a deal that Duncan would find an English bride when he comes of age. So basically you have 2 meddling grandfathers and Duncan stuck in the middle, and they basically planned out his whole life for him. So this is really, on top of a romance, this is really like Duncan kind of being an adult and taking the reins back from his, albeit loving but overbearing grandparents to, kind of take control of his life. Sabrina lives with her main aunts. Her parents have also passed away, and they live right next door to Duncan's English grandfather. And this whole story takes place during an English country estate party. Oh, sometimes those are so fun, even though they seem to last for months at a time. Even though that's probably not chronologically correct, but it's just sometimes the whole book is just in there. And this is it. The whole book, except for like the very last bit, takes place at this country party. So Sabrina finds herself, she thinks she's very plain and she's not much to look at, which is kind of ridiculous because, I don't know, how could someone with violet eyes be plain? But I guess so, the way other people react to her, she's not very pretty, but she's okay with that. She's very sweet, she's very funny. Her and Duncan become friends, and she catches the feelings. So she keeps it very buried inside because she knows he has to marry someone else, and he doesn't look at her that way. She doesn't want to lose the friendship. Duncan slowly falls in love with her personality first, and everything else that follows. And because of Duncan's temper, he is almost forced to marry somebody else. the protagonist in this, who is Ophelia, she's something. So in this book, you really, really dislike her. You don't, she's just like this, you know, Regency era mean girl, and you just really don't like her. Now, where the Reid family comes in is during this holiday, estate party, not holiday, oof, sorry about that, estate party. Sabrina becomes friends with Reid, who is an heir to a dukedom. And it kind of causes a little jealousy with Duncan, which, you know, good, because in the span of just a couple days, he kind of feels like he just sort of takes, not takes advantage, but takes for granted Sabrina would always be there for him to, like, make him laugh and stuff. So, I mean, that happened really quickly. So that's, that always kind of, like, made me like, huh, that's always why this has never been a 5-star for me, because, like, that just was, like, a little, like, alright, that's kind of fast, alright, bro. So that's where the hijinks ensue. He's, because of propriety, he's going to be forced to marry somebody else. So there's a whole bunch of like at the end of the book, there really almost seems like you should be listening to Betty Hill music when that is happening. Probably most people don't know what I'm talking about, but like it just seems kind of wacky how things turn out. But there is happily ever after, which is really great. So I just, you know, I needed like a nice, comfy read. Again, I told you I get nostalgic during the holiday season, so this was my reread, my comfort read for this week. So that's it for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll try to manage my time better when the holidays come around. We'll see. So I don't want to, but it's time for me to get back to the real world. And if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. If not, that's okay. See ya.